Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
As Native communities across the country reclaim their narratives and embrace their cultural heritages, our work at St. Joseph's Indian School has become increasingly enriched through Indigenous ways of knowing. It's time to ask, well then, what about an Indigenous evaluation framework for our students? Hello, Matakiepi, and welcome to Hochoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School's campus. I'm Scott Wooster, your Hochoka host. Today, we're joined once again by Dr. Melanie Nadu. She is here on campus this week working with staff involved in program evaluation, our health center, and our counseling services area to create and implement an Indigenous evaluation framework for those programs. So welcome back again, Dr. Mel.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So you were able to spend some time on campus following some of our people around in our counseling services and our health center, and you got a chance to look at the campus a little bit. A lot of our viewers, whether they're family members or they're donors, have seen some of the campus, but you got a little more intimate look at that when you were able to tour. Could you just give our viewers an idea of what you found here so far?
Well, I have to say, just to share some fun background, when I was in graduate school, I used to send little small donations to the school.
Okay.
And so when
Really?
I was contacted, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I remember this school.
Yeah.
And I used to love the little fun packs I'd get.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was really excited. I was really excited to come and visit. And I have to say that I'm really, really impressed with the work that's being done here and the mindfulness around the students' needs and what can be done.
Yeah.
Just want to commend the team for the great work that they're doing. I had so much fun touring the campus, talking with the people on the ground doing the work that is so very important and foundational, and just hearing how the employees they love working here.
Yeah.
And they've been here a very long time.
Yeah.
So, and have grown in their capacity in working with Native people. So it's really great to see that. And so I really had a great time visiting and seeing the work that's being done.
Excellent. Evaluating students with Indigenous measures, something that's an Indigenous way of knowing. Why is that important, again, for us, for our students and our families?
So, and just to bring us back on the importance of identifying those values and starting there and ensuring that those values are identified with whoever is involved in the process, and whoever, if it's parents, if it's, family members, if it's students, just ensuring that we're grounded in the values when we start the work. Mm-hmm. So I worked with this one tribe in particular in Minnesota, and me and my team, and we were in the process of building capacity to do Indigenous evaluation. And so we were out in the field working with them, and we had this big, huge, sticky wall that filled up the entire wall, and we said, okay, we're going to start at the end. What are you trying to do? And the state of Minnesota hired us to implement an Indigenous evaluation framework, and that was the first time the state of Minnesota had ever put out a call for entity to apply an Indigenous evaluation framework, and they were funding it.
Wow.
So me and my team were very excited, and we're like, hey, this is the first time we've ever seen a call like this. We applied. We ended up getting awarded the funds to work with Minnesota tribes, and we had just a wonderful experience. And the way that work articulated the process was different for every tribe, and we learned so much, and we evaluated ourselves in the process of doing this work. Well, with the one community, we were mapping out, okay, they were already into the work probably their third year. Mm-hmm. And so they already had been doing this for a while. So we said, okay, what are you trying to do? So we went right back to ground zero, say, okay, what are you trying to do? And really fleshed out that long-term statement. And then we worked our way back And we said, okay, what are the activities that you're doing? And then just mapped it, moved the sticky notes around. Okay, what do you need to do this? And after we got done, the whole entire wall was just packed with information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I looked at that and I assessed where they had been and where they wanted to go, and looked at the reports that were being reported to the state,
mm-hmm.
over 50% of the information was missing.
Okay.
And so the tool that was being used was limiting the information uptake because they weren't asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked the state, I said, why are you collecting this information? And then, the individuals that were working on these programs, they were just report the same thing again and again and again, because it was the form wasn't being responsive to where they were at,
right,
and what they were doing.
Yeah,
and they weren't asking the right questions. And the state said, "Oh, it's because that's what we've always done." And I said, and then they had a different reporting process for the tribe, and so it was very burdensome. So here you have someone that's implementing program, that's doing great work, that's spending a lot of time doing a process that's not benefiting anybody.
Right.
And so we restructured that process of capturing this information, because what's important at the core is that you're capturing the story of what's happening. So I'm also a trained mixed methodologist, and a huge advocate for saying we need to collect our quantitative data, but we also need the qualitative data, the story behind what is happening here. And we need to understand how to integrate that information to tell a very enriched story that has both types of data in it that's integrated.
Yep.
So.
And if you're working with the tribes in Minnesota to do this in order to help those tribes, and you're doing it to help the state of Minnesota, right? I mean, that's who the contract is with. And if you do your job right, it's a win-win for everybody. The state learns how to better understand the tribes on their level, and you learn more about the tribes to feed back to them, and it just brings about a better understanding.
Absolutely. So this is work that, has since... Well, it's interesting because the projects are still going, and then I'm no longer, part of the evaluation team. Now, the evaluation team, interestingly enough, I didn't know this because they asked me probably 6 months ago to be on their community advisory board. So now I'm on the community advisory board.
Okay, yep.
And I had to go to the Twin Cities so that they could talk about, what's going on. And there was a group of individuals there that Project Mosaic is what they're called. And they were doing an Indigenous evaluation process, and it was one of my students.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so she created a framework that was based on the star quilt in my class, and she was using it in the field for the process of me being there present as, one of the community advisory board members. And so I it's just been so fun because I can see real time now. I started out the work with Indigenous valuation. Now one of my students is out there driving the work, and we can see that the state of Minnesota is really a leader in this work around Indigenous evaluation and how that can be done, and what does that look like in practice. Because you can have a framework, but it's not. Everybody wants the cookbook, right? Everybody wants the answers.
Yep.
It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Because it's a process. And so people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. Well, so what's this going to look like? It's going to look different every single time. It's the process of how you do the work that's the focus. So when you apply Indigenous evaluation frameworks, you're actually creating a process of working with the people that you want to work with in a meaningful way that's meaningful to them. And you have to trust the process and trust where it's going to go. And if you do that, if you just let go and do the work in a good way, good things come from it.
Right.
So.
Right. And it's going to look much different for our school right here than it would for the example used in Minnesota.
Yes.
Coming into this school is going to have a different process, different outcomes,
Yes.
all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Yep.
When you were younger, I read that a personal goal that you had was to work with youth. And so how does that motivate you coming here? How does that motivate you to be at St. Joe's and to work with us?
I'm really excited to be here. So for me, I've had a long journey, but like I said, whenever you're working with tribal communities, you should always be grounded in having the elders inform your work, having the youth inform your work. Mm-hmm. And so I like to keep grounded in the work and visit, work with the community, see where the students are at, because things have changed a lot over time. And just the problems that the youth are facing today, the things that they're dealing with today, I would have never have envisioned myself when I was a youth. It's a totally different time.
It is.
It's a totally different place, and they're dealing with some very huge issues.
You spent some time in our program evaluation areas yesterday, and the work that we're doing, we've said it many times, it's unfolding and organic in nature. It'll kind of takes its own course, which you have a sense of appreciation for that, as I do, to watch that process happen, which I like. As we come up with a process that makes sense from an Indigenous perspective, what is in your toolbox specifically? If you open that up, what are some things about the evaluation that are going to be wildly different than if we just use standard methods?
So I think it really comes down to the level that you're thinking at. Like I said, you can get too far into the weeds, and you always have to. I always start with, who am I gathering information for, and what's important to them to know? And I think we skip that step a lot.
Yep.
We get stuck in these, like, oh, this is standard information that we need to collect. This is standard information. And then the information, we're not being responsive to change. We're not being responsive to what's happening. We're not being responsive into what's needed. And if you just stop and think about it, to have a tool that's stagnant, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, eventually you're going to have to revive that tool, reground that tool, ensure that it's still measuring what you think it's measuring, ensure that you're getting the information that you need. If you go back to the drawing table and you say, okay, who are we serving? Why are we collecting this information? Because you all here are doing this a lot of work, and you're working in a lot of realms, working in a wraparound fashion. You can get lost in the weeds very easily. There's so much that you can look at. It can blow up on you really fast. So it's very important to say, who are we gathering this information for? If we're gathering this information for our donors, hey donors, what kind of information is important to you? Well, we want to hear stories. Well, then maybe we need to be implementing a process of creating digital stories and then evaluating the impact of those stories. Did those stories, is this what you wanted? Is it, are you feeling the impact that's important to you? Are we demonstrating that through this story, shared story? That's the kind of thing that you want to be looking at.
Yeah.
Not how many stories did we create?
Right.
Right. How many students created a story? So it just really comes down to, why are we collecting what we're collecting? Who are we serving? What's important to them? How can we tap into that in a meaningful way? And then let's evaluate that process in a way that makes sense for whoever we're serving and the very people that we're getting the information from. And when we gather that information, you always want to pause and say, did we get it right? Is this what you want? Are we representing you in a way that's meaningful for you? Are we tapping into the impact that you feel that this has had on you? Are we capturing that? So I worked with a researcher in Minneapolis when I was in school, and I was put in charge of running the Indigenous evaluation process with these elders that were in the city. And I worked with like 4 cohorts of elders over probably 5 years of time. And I felt so very privileged to be in that space. These elders, a lot of them had been relocated out to the cities. And I learned a lot being part of that process. Every meeting we started out with a talking circle and prayer and passed around an eagle feather. There was a traditional leader there that would lead us through that process and give us the spiritual guidance that we needed. And it was so powerful. I learned so much through that process. Well, I was a graduate student, and they didn't teach Indigenous evaluation in school.
Right.
I had to try to figure this out. And how did I do it? Well, I did what I thought was right. And one of the things was when I gathered this information from the elders, I'd give it back to them. I say, did I get this right? Like, did I interpret what you said correctly? And they'd go through it and they'd be like, oh no, this isn't right. You want to adjust this, you want to do that. And the one elder told me, he said, Mel, you're the first person that's ever given me information back that they gathered from me. That's sad. And he had been involved in a lot of initiatives throughout his life. He was an elder. And I thought at that moment, I'm like, I'm not going to be that person.
Right.
Like, I'm always going to, the very people that I'm collecting information from, I'm always going to bring it back to them first. I'm always going to make sure that they have the time from me to say, did I get this right? And when you do things that way, it just turns out good.
Right.
It just turns out good. And when I worked with the elders and this researcher, this is when I really started understanding that we need to go back to the drawing board and create our own measures and making sure that we're asking what we want to know and not getting too caught up in the details. And the researcher was thinking that they were measuring knowledge. And they said, okay, if we bring in all of these traditional folks that talk about the traditional use of tobacco, the medicinal and positive and spiritual impacts that tobacco has, and we worked with these elders to grow the tobacco, to understand the varieties of tobacco out there, what was indigenous to the land that they were from, and they grew their own tobacco. The researcher thought she was measuring knowledge. So if we brought in all of these traditional folks to teach about traditional tobacco, the knowledge should go up, and the comfort level of talking about these things should go up, and we should be able to change social norms. Wrong. Because it's not, certain people have the right to talk about those things at the community level. And so it's not just a matter of increasing knowledge.
Right.
Because the very people that you're increasing, that's an important part of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean those are going to be the ones who deliver the message.
Right.
Because from a cultural perspective, that person is different than what mainstream approach would take. And so that researcher wasn't doing or measuring what she intended to do because she wasn't culturally grounded and did not understand how that worked in tribal communities. And that's like a real practical answer of why it's important to start over here.
At its most basic level, what I'm hearing you say is you walk in and you read the room. You don't walk in with a clipboard to get the data. There's a way of doing things.
Exactly.
Perfect. So you're going to be back in the podcast room again with me and with some other people, the heads of a few different areas in the school, who we'll get to talk with a little more as you meet with them this week, and we'll get to see what kind of knowledge is gleaned from those conversations and what kind of direction we're plotting for our school based on some of the teachings that you've been bringing to us, which is great. So thank you for what we did in this session, and I'll look forward to the next session.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you to our viewers and our audience for joining us here at Ho-Chokeh at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School campus, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Until next time, stay centered.